So you've written about the gender divide, the gender paradox, and as you just painted a picture there, men seem to be going more to the right and women going to the left. And I'm not entirely convinced by that, by the way, because there's other studies I've seen that suggest men aren't actually going further to the right, but it's women are going further to the left. And so it appears as if men are going further to the right because of this increasing divide. Have I got that right or wrong?
Yeah. So it's interesting. So the fact that young women have veered to the left, that is, I've never seen anything refuting that. That seems to be well validated. Men going to the right, young men, so we're talking kind of under 30, that one is more mixed, where some surveys do show a slight shift to the right. Others surveys show no shift at all. But it is the case, because we have the voter data, that they did, at least in terms of how they voted, a lot of young men did shift toward Trump, whether or not they personally identify as conservative or not.
Is it abnormal in greater history for men and women to vote differently? We might feel like it's different in our lifetime, but through history, is that a peculiarity?
Well, it's interesting. So, if you spend a lot of time in more right-leaning circles, they'll talk about how women are naturally liberal or naturally progressive or something like that. But this doesn't seem to be the case. Up until the 1980s, women were actually more likely to identify as conservative and more likely to identify as Republican than men were. Men were actually more likely to be Democrats up until the 80s. And then starting in the 90s, that's when the reversal occurred, where men started to lean more conservative and women started to lean more liberal. And I still don't know exactly what happened there. Why this is the case. Could be the end of the Cold War. It could be it could be marriage. Women, the majority of women, under 30 women used to be married in the 80s and 90s. And then that's kind of the era where things started to shift in the opposite direction. The characteristics of the parties were different as well, where I think Democrats and Republicans, the sort of leadership on the parties were not so very different. And possibly if you were a working aged young male, you might have favored a bit more sort of bigger government, maybe more of a safety net, because you had so much more of a financial burden on your shoulders. Whereas that's less true today for young men, where you're not necessarily expected to provide for a family because, well, fewer families are being formed in the first place. And the Republicans have historically been kind of the party of strength and protection and this kind of thing. And maybe that appealed to, wives and mothers. This is speculation here for one possibility for why this occurred. Whereas today it's very much, you mentioned the gender equality paradox, where now women are veering very sharply to the left. And people have been asking, why is this the case? And
women or young women?
Young women. Well, women in general, but
even married women.
No. Single women, especially young women under 30, but across the board, married women might be an exception, but otherwise, women are tilting to the left regardless of their age. But the shift is most pronounced among under 30. Relative to under 30 men. And you're seeing this across developed first world countries. There was that famous image from the Financial Times of the US, Germany, the UK, Japan, so on, all these countries where the gender split is occurring. And
South Korea as well.
Oh, right, South Korea.
The anomaly is Singapore, which seems to be had an inversion where it's men are getting more liberal and women are more conservative. But
interesting.
We'll come back to that anomaly. Can I just rewind one moment just to why it is that marriage makes a difference? Now, I would speculate or guess the answer being that if you have children, you should want to protect your children. So you have a mother would have a protective instinct. And so a conservative government or conservative politics that are pro-protection, that's what they want. And so as you implied, so the 80s and 90s, the age for marriage increases, then there's more single women who don't have that mother instinct for protection. Have I does that make sense, or have I got that completely wrong?
No, that's interesting. I mean, that may be why. I think also, Yes, you turn more inward than outward when you have a family, right? Like now you have these people around you who rely on you, who depend on you, and even men who, start out as a bit more conservative nowadays than women, they become more so after they get married. So everyone kind of becomes more conservative after they get married, and then even more so once they have children. So there's kind of two-step process there. And so, why does this happen? So I think one is what you're describing, turning inward and taking care of the people around you rather than looking outward and thinking, how can I change the world? It becomes, how do I make sure my kid has a good life, and setting the kid up for success. And then I think also, men and women tend to have a tendency to depolarize one another. When you enter a relationship and you start out with slightly different political views, but then you tend to kind of adjust over time. Men do a little bit of adjusting, but I think women in a relationship tend to do more, in terms of women are more likely to adopt the political views of their male partner than vice versa. Which isn't to say that men are also, they're affected as well, where they might become a bit more liberal in some sense. But women tend to be even more sort of turning toward that conservative orientation.
Is there any indication that this divide is affecting men and women relationships? And are Republicans and Democrats dating more or less or the same as beforehand?
This actually connects to our earlier discussion about the growing divide, feelings of animosity toward the political outgroup. So in the 1960s, if you asked Americans, is it okay for your child to marry someone of a different race? The overwhelming majority, some 80 to 90%, said no. But when you ask them, is it okay for your child to marry someone of the opposing political party, the majority said yes. More than 50% said that would be fine. Today, it's the reverse, where if you ask Americans, is it okay for your child to marry someone of a different race, the overwhelming majority, 90% plus, say that's fine. But if you ask, is it okay for your child to marry someone of the opposing political party, more than 50% say no way. They would really not like that. And so our feelings of hostility and confrontation and anger, it's been redirected away from racism, which is a good thing, but it's not a good thing that we still are seeing it channeled in this other way. And you're seeing this now with and this again, this seems to be more so coming from the left, probably because for interesting evolutionary psychology reasons, where if you ask conservatives, would you date a liberal? They're more likely to say yes than if you ask liberals, would you date a conservative? Now, most people generally would prefer to date someone of their own political party, but if you just ask them point blank, would you be open to dating someone of the opposing party? Conservatives are more open to it than liberals. And my suspicion for why this is the case is that there are more women who identify as liberals, and women tend to be more choosy with who they date. They want someone who shares their values and so on. But this gets tricky because the very traits that make men attractive to women tend to be more conservative coded. So being self-sufficient and financially successful and ambitious and all those kinds of things, those aren't necessarily coded as left-leaning. And so I saw this funny tweet a few months ago. It was something like, it was from a woman. She said something like, I want a man who looks like a conservative but votes like a liberal.
Thanks for watching this clip from The Winston Marshall Show. You can click here to watch the full episode, and for more clips like this one, don't forget to subscribe. And as always, be well.